Gig delivery drivers, gig drivers as a whole, being able to appeal their deactivation notices. I'm going to talk about that on this segment of the Gig Geezer. If this is your first time checking out the Gig Geezer, or if you're a returning visitor of the Gig Geezer, hey, thanks for coming by. And if you would not mind, hit that subscribe button, give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. Now, I noticed an online article from the Chicago Sun-Times that highlighted a proposed Chicago City ordinance that may give drivers a more solid standing, being able to appeal their gig app platform deactivations. Now, according to this article that was dated Tuesday, January 17, 2023, drivers from rideshare platforms of Uber and Lyft, as well as food gig delivery platforms like DoorDash, UberEats, GrubHub, and Instacart, drivers would be guaranteed to appeal deactivations stemming from a proposal by Chicago's City Council Committee on Workforce Development. This Committee on Workforce Development is similar to like New York City's, which has been in the news like back in December and November of 2022, in that in New York City, they had proposed to raise the minimum wage for gig food delivery app drivers to where it's at least $17 plus an hour in 2023, and by 2025 the minimum would go up to $23.82 an hour. Now, what makes this article noteworthy, for whatever it's worth, is the fact that this is arguably the first proposed legislation of its kind by some government entity. And according to this article, a driver resource center in the Chicago market would be formed, enabling drivers to present their side of the story to, say, like Lyft's deactivation appeals panel. And if the alleged reason for deactivation is determined to have been falsely waged by a customer, drivers will be paid for lost wages plus 9%. Now, the article does not describe the article does not describe how lost wages are calculated, nor does this article mention anything about any recourse to the fraudulent accusatory customer. In all too familiar recollections and experiences by drivers alike, including myself, the proposal is born out of drivers being deactivated for reasons unknown, unwarranted, and outright false. Usually, the driver is informed in an email that he or she has been deactivated. And while the platform usually communicates that a driver has the right to appeal, that appeal, as many of us drivers know, is nothing more than empty talk. And it is an exercise in futility for the driver who receives yet another all too familiar canned reply stating, "Your deactivation decision is final." This article also goes on to describe the experience of a couple of drivers who were accused by riders that led to their deactivations. In one example, a driver was accused of having left the scene of an accident at a high rate of speed when, in fact, there was no accident. He had to go as far as proving not only to his insurance company, but to the rideshare app company. And he had to also get police reports and other documentation to prove otherwise. In the other example, a driver reacted to a rider who had harassed him repeatedly with phone calls, accusing him of having stolen a ring that was left in his vehicle, which turned out the ring was never in his vehicle. Now, I have shared that my entry into gig economy work was through rideshare, and I've been active on both the Uber and Lyft apps for more than 6 years now. And I've not attempted any ride on either app since October 2020. And before that, it was March 2020. What I've been consistent in saying, at least here on the Gig Geezer channel, that I have zero interest in taking any rides. And that's despite having completed over 3,000 rides on Uber and exactly 1,600 on Lyft. Now, while I was never sent a deactivation email, at least from the time in which I did most of my driving, which is from 2017 to 2019, I received more than my share of emails from Uber and Lyft in which customers made false claims against me. So now you ask, Geezer, what are you talking about? Well, a couple of them was under the topic of my vehicle lacking cleanliness. In fact, in one case, a woman said that my vehicle had smelled like dogs had been in it. Well, I've not owned a dog since childhood. And so at that time, we're talking at least 45 years. Secondly, that occurred in 2018. The allegation was waged out of uh, driving this lady from a hood apartment to a facility in West Columbia. Um, the only time a dog had been in my vehicle, which is one of those stress dogs, like those military um, dogs that veterans use for stress, um, that occurred in Charleston. And I don't recall that being in the same day. Well, the second time, in addition to the claim of my vehicle lacking cleanliness, the rider who was from Florida and a actual rideshare driver, he claimed that my vehicle was basically a functioning piece of shit. And these are a series of pictures and receipts that are linked to this particular incident. So what it was that we're traveling on the freeway having left the airport, and we're about 10, 15 minutes into the drive, and all of a sudden I experienced at 75 miles an hour a very bad vibration, rumbling, and then like a grinding and screeching that could have been compared to like a wheel hub that had gone bad, or um, the rotor was grinding up against the brake caliper. Well, what actually had happened, there was a bolt that had backed out of the back of my brake caliper bracket, and it caused the rotor to kind of be unstable. And I pointed this out to the driver, also noting that this had happened to me on a different vehicle like a couple years prior. Well, the rider went ahead and hailed another Uber. But then a couple of hours later, I got a notification from Uber that my account had been placed on hold due to these added allegations by this rider. Well, it took me the rest of the afternoon to try to find where I could locate this bolt. I'd gone to a couple of part shops, and I then, after spending a couple of hours, made the determination I had to go to the Ford dealership. And so this is where all the receipts and the actual bolt that you see, not to mention the before and after where the bolt was replaced. And the following morning, I was cleared by Uber, but you can tell some of the bullshit that was communicated to me. Now, the next claim that really stood out was a Lyft rider. This happened in West Columbia slash Casey, in which I was quick to find out that this rider was going less than 5 minutes, which was an absolute waste of my time, and I did not hide my displeasure about it. Well, this rider then retaliated by telling Lyft that I had ran through several stop signs. Yes, plural stop signs. And this is some of the communication that I had with Lyft regarding this customer making these false claims. Now, that's just three examples out of many. In all, for about 6 to 8 months in that stretch through 2017 and 2018, I had a really bad run with customers. And I went back and forth with Lyft at a minimum of twice a week, demanding that, especially Lyft, document my side of things, as well as they remove these bad customer ratings that went with it. It was that experience while doing rideshare that made me realize just how tenuous our status is on these apps. That's right. We are literally one ride or one delivery away from being deactivated. Now, I know that I'm speaking by and large to the choir, but again, I'm going to say this again. We are one ride or delivery away from being deactivated. Our ratings don't matter. Our time on the active on the app doesn't matter, nor any of the good um, things that have been said about us by riders and customers in which we may have gone above and beyond the call of duty. Too often, these customers do this, at least making these false allegations because they didn't get away with us drivers, or they did it because they weren't able to get over on us drivers, or they were quick to realize our displeasure about them being in our vehicles and that we don't appreciate them being in our vehicles. These false claims are often their way of retaliating against us, knowing all too well that the app platform is going to take their word as gospel, and they'll go as far as placating them by offering a refund and or additional coupons as consolation to them. And oftentimes their final swipe taken at us is by trashing us with their ratings. Now, as a gig food delivery driver, this kind of behavior is also not a strange occurrence as well. Now, for the longest, at least it's been in my experience, DoorDash had failed to implement measures to safeguard against false claims by customers not receiving their food. And at least on my part, on the Gig Geezer channel, I have shared numerous stories in which I've caught multiple customers having committed multiple acts of fraudulence. And those also occurred on the Instacart and GrubHub apps. But the frustrating part about it was that neither app did anything about the customers, but yet I have received notifications from them in abundance in which customers have made false claims against me. But usually, again, these things are exacerbated by the fact that customers also are empowered to take away all or part of the tips, or they're empowered to trash us with their ratings. By the way, if you like the content that's been provided in this segment of the Gig Geezer or in any other segment of the Gig Geezer, hit that subscribe button. Give my content a thumbs up, share my content among others, and I definitely welcome your comments in the section below. I'm going to end this segment of the Gig Geezer by noting that perhaps this Chicago proposal may be a step in the right direction for drivers, in which it does give drivers a platform and a medium by which they can make themselves be heard. I think at this juncture, this is just one market. I've not seen any other market, again, as I mentioned earlier, that has put together some kind of legislative proposal that gives drivers some voice, some medium by which we can actually put forth our appeal, and it be in an arena in which it could be heard forcefully by these gig app platforms. The question, though, is will these gig app platforms do something about it? And that is really an elusive and evasive question at this juncture. So I guess we have to take it as a step in the right direction, and hopefully there is some proof behind it. And so with that, this is yet another segment of the Gig Geezer. I'm in Wood Lane, and as always, may your hustle and may your grind continue.